So this morning I had a chance to watch the biographical film Straight Outta Compton, which I've been excited about ever since I learned of its impending release. And not too surprisingly, Soul of the Bang, not coincidentally, put a comment on one of my videos this morning asking me to review the movie, as he often does with pop culture interests, and particularly those that speak to racial injustice. So I watched the movie. I had intended to watch the movie just because I'm a longtime fan of NWA. I grew up in that era. I was in high school when NWA really hit big. I was kind of just finishing high school, and me and one of my buddies, were really into the gangster rap thing. He installed a wicked stereo system inside of his little Ford Ranger pickup truck, and we used to drive around and feel tough. And we were listening to NWA, we were listening to Ice Cube's solo stuff, we listened to old Ice-T, we were listening to Arabian Prince, we were listening to Too Short, we were listening to Booyah Tribe. We were listening to everything that was going on in the late 1980s. I can't even remember all of them, but La Trim. But yeah, we were really into that stuff, listening to it anyway, and the feeling of it. And so it's always been the kind of the feeling of that old style reality / gangster rap that I've been attracted to. You know, I got not, you know, after that era, I left for the army. I left for the army in 1990s, and Nirvana hit the scene, and I shifted in that direction toward grunge, and I didn't really follow the hip hop scene much after that. But during that era, yeah, for sure, I was a fan, and I still remain a fan. When I hear those songs, I love those songs, right? So I was excited to see the movie, and watched it this morning. My feelings about it are that if you're wondering if you should see the movie or not, you definitely should. All right, so that's kind of a general review. See the movie if you haven't, because it speaks to a lot of what was going on in that little era. You know, it brought back some memories that you know, I had forgotten, actually, some of the songs and some of the things that were happening at the time, and it covers that era pretty well. And the actors who played the NWA band members really were spot on. I mean, they were they looked so much like NWA, it was crazy. And the messages, well, are very relevant still today, especially the message about basically kind of racial injustice, right? And this is what Soul of the Bang was asking me about. There's a scene in there when the members of the group, are outside of the recording studio, and the cops see them there, and they stop by, and they're basically like shaking them down, checking them for drugs and stuff. They knock their drinks out of their hands and make them get down on the sidewalk. There's a black cop amongst them who's kind of even more outrageous in his behavior than the white cops, and that becomes, you know, impetus for that famous lyric that the black police showing off for the white cops in Fuck the Police. Yeah, it's a scene that is very relevant still today, as we see, because in that era, end of the 1980s, we didn't have the video cameras and the phones and all this crap that we have today, so that we can actually catch these injustices as they happen on video and give them to the world to see. Back then, that didn't exist, right? And so a lot of this stuff was happening, and the police didn't have to feel any kind of hesitation at all. I mean, today, you see the stuff that's coming out in the media today, the things that are caught, the things that are seen, observed. Imagine, and that was, and today, you know, we know that there's this possibility that whatever you do is going to be recorded, right? So imagine an era not so long ago when there was no possibility of that, or very, very little possibility of being recorded, and what the police might have been like at that time. This movie, one of the things that it portrays very well that we can all relate to today is that sense of the police being bullies, which in some instances, not all, but some instances they certainly are, and the fact that people of color have to face that reality a lot, right? That they're judged on the basis of their skin color,
Hi, Mom.
the clothes that they wear, all that kind of stuff, and that you can get, you know, a guy that's really just doing his business gets shaken down and is assumed to be some kind of a hoodlum. So that was something that we can all relate to, and I think, you know, for me also, that kind of social injustice was one of the things that I related to back in that era as well. Hello. And I think that's why that music was very popular with teenagers. Didn't matter if they were black or white or whatever. Everybody was into NWA and the gangster rap and the empowerment that was felt through that, because everybody could relate to that kind of injustice, especially if you're a young person. So one of the things that a little bit disappointed me in the film is that every significant white character in the film is portrayed as kind of a either they're being a bully or they're being a weasel, and in all cases the significant figures, if they're not the cops, but all the businessmen, all the white businessmen, are made to kind of at one point or another, like, you know, basically like scream and beg like little girls. That kind of bothered me, you know, that because I know that a whole lot of NWA records sold to white people as well, who could relate to it, even though you know, it was these guys' reality. The injustices and the empowerment of the language and the lyrics and the sounds is something that's relatable to everybody. So, you know, there's a little tinge of like a reverse kind of racism in there. There's a little bit of, you know, playing up the heroicism of like Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, whereas Eazy-E, because he's not alive anymore, they could flesh out his character a little bit and, you know, give him a little bit more edginess, give him a bad side and a good side kind of a thing, you know, make him a more full character than the two guys who are still involved, and I think we're fairly heavily involved in the movie itself. So yeah, there's that stuff. But overall, I think it was a good movie, especially the first half of the movie. There's a point where it transitions and you can feel it. It's, you start seeing Eazy-E show up and he's like coughing and stuff, and because everybody who's aware of NWA knows that, okay, he's gonna die at some point, right? But it seems like the movie kind of transitions for the last third, maybe even half of the movie toward okay, how is Eazy-E gonna, Eazy-E is gonna die, so we're leading up to this. There's all kinds of conflict between the members, especially the three, Dre and Cube and Eazy-E, and but it just kind of like the movie slows down and becomes this thing where it's ultimately, the movie finishes with Eazy's death. And I don't know if that's right where it should have finished or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it felt like anticlimactic, like the best part of the movie. What should have been, kind of, this was the story of NWA, might have been before that at some point. They could have, because the movie was a long movie. It was, I think, 140 minutes long. So it could have concluded way back when NWA still was NWA. I thought it was kind of cool to show how, Ice Cube set off on his own, became a success on his own, a solo success, and the kind of the rivalry a little bit between them, and then how Dre was moving in with Suge Knight and their conflicts, and some of the cultivating of the new artists that went on with Snoop Dogg and Tupac and all that kind of thing. I liked that, but I thought it could have been done better. The first part of the movie where it's just NWA doing their thing is so awesome that it's kind of a letdown when you get into the second half of the movie, and these other aspects of the story seem to not be handled as carefully, or portrayed as convincingly. And so, yeah, those are my feelings. But definitely, if you haven't seen the movie, it's worth seeing, especially, if you were in that era and you remember this and it was anything to you. Definitely check it out. But even if you weren't, it'll be it's a learning tool. It's not 100% accurate, right? And not that it misrepresents per se. It just doesn't fully represent some of the things that everybody knows happened. Anyway, that was my movie review, straight out of Compton. It's a go see.